Okay, so let's move towards short-run costs. Again, the question, what is short, what is long run? We adopt the approach that we used in the theory of production. We say short run is when labor can be changed and capital is fixed. Over the long run, we can change both, right? In the short run costs, we can differentiate between variable costs and fixed costs, and they together create total costs, TC. So as you can see here, total costs, TC, are total economic costs, right, incurred when a given output is produced. So when you want to produce a given amount of your output, TC is your total economic cost that you have to incur. Fixed and variable costs. What's the difference between those two categories? Fixed costs are costs that are independent from your production. So no matter whether you produce more or less, fixed costs wouldn't change because of that. Among the examples you can find property tax. You pay the tax on your property when you run a business, and it doesn't matter whether you produce a lot or nothing. Your insurance against fire. Doesn't matter whether you produce or not, you pay it. If you lease a few cars, the leasing company wants their money every month, depending on the number of cars that you lease, but it doesn't matter how much you produce or not. So these are fixed costs. Fixed costs are not constant, they are fixed. They are fixed in the sense they are independent from the output, but obviously they can change, right? So it is possible that the leasing company may actually increase the payments. It is possible. So you may pay more of fixed cost, but this is not because of your output, not because of your production. For variable costs, we say these are costs that are dependent on the output. So actually, if you produce nothing, then you have no variable costs. But if your production is positive, I mean it is bigger than zero, then variable cost is something that you have to cover. They are related to the production in the sense that variable costs are growing when input grows. So the bigger production, the bigger costs. Are they proportional to the production? No, they are not, or not necessarily, right? In many cases, variable costs are treated linear, like there is a linear relation between variable costs and production. This is quite often, for instance, for business plans. In many business plans, there is the simplification of linear costs, but they are not linear. In fact, if you analyze a range of production that is long enough, so you trace from very small production to a very big production, you will see that variable costs are not linear. They have the tendency of growing first slowly and then quite quickly. This simplification and ignoring the fact that variable costs do not increase in a linear way, but may actually grow faster than linear, poses a certain threat to many businesses, right? What are the examples of variable costs? Well, this is, for instance, your electricity consumption for your production, or this is the salary of workers that are directly involved in manufacturing, or materials, or packaging. These kinds of costs would belong to variable costs. Obviously, there are also some problems with categorization. It's not sometimes it's not very easy to differentiate between fixed and variable cost, right? Take into account your electricity bill, right? Every month when you run a business, every month you pay electricity bill for the electric energy that you consume. Is it a fixed or a variable cost? On one hand, we are very likely to classify this bill as variable cost because the more you produce in your business, the more electricity you will probably use. So this kind of cost would depend on your output. But on the other hand, if you look at your office, your secretary, you consume some electricity there, like by using coffee machine or copier or computers and printers and whatever you have in your office. And the consumption of electricity in your office does not really depend on how much you produce. So that would be kind of fixed, right? But you get one bill for the whole company, so you should be able kind of to break it into two separate categories if you want to differentiate between fixed costs and variable costs. Look at the graphical illustration of costs here in the slide. You can see those three categories: total, fixed, and variable costs, depending on Q, on production, quantity produced. And the first category is fixed cost. As you can see, it does not depend on quantity. So whether you produce less or more doesn't matter. Fixed cost is fixed. As we discussed that already, it's not constant, which means this fixed cost can go up or down, but never because of quantity produced. Then you've got variable costs. As I mentioned, if you produce nothing, those variable costs are zero. Then they start growing. They start growing more and more slowly in the first part. And after exceeding certain point, and this point is different for different businesses, for different industries, for different markets. After exceeding this point, those costs start to grow faster and faster. And total costs are the sum of those two. So graphically taking, it's just the same line, the same shape as variable costs, but pushed up by the value of fixed costs. So pushed up by this vertical distance here, right?